So, dearly beloveds, welcome. We are gathered here today to witness uh, the inaugural broadcast of Sodium Haze here on YouTube. Now, for those of you who don't know us, we are a broadly left-leaning, anti-war website that tries to confront and decode the more egregious lies of the corporate media. Ordinarily, we wouldn't bother with YouTube or with Facebook, but one needs a way in these troubled times to try and disseminate one's message. And since the start of the escalation in the Ukrainian conflict, anti-war messages such as ours are being algorithmed out of existence on Facebook. So as an attempt to try and reach some more people, here we are on YouTube, a new venture for us. Bear with us while we learn the technology. This is all a bit new to us, and we hopefully will get a bit better at it as we go along. We dedicate today's inaugural program as an anti-war platform to the soldiers, civilians, the families who are losing their lives in Ukraine, in service of the oligarchies of the West and of Russia. We don't subscribe to the idea that this conflict is between some amorphous entity called Russia and some amorphous entity called Ukraine. Be clear, this is two elite groups of people with elite power and money squabbling over resources, and we don't feel that that is a good thing to throw your life away for. Okay, this program will directly deal today with three stories. One concerns Bakhmut, one concerns the ongoing turmoil in the banking sector, and one with regards to the story doing the rounds about a drone down in the Black Sea. To turn first of all to Bakhmut, which is a city in eastern Ukraine, which is under a veritable modern siege right now, and two narratives are coming forth about whether the capture of Bakhmut by Russia, which seems likely with each passing hour, is of any military or strategic value. Listed this quote amongst many I could have used from the corporate media, which sums up the two positions very succinctly. The view of the Americans is summed up by the US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, speaking in Brussels, I believe. And this is what he said. He believes that Bakhmut is more of a symbolic value than it is strategic and operational. So I think Bakhmut is more of a symbolic value than it is strategic and operational, and you will hear this motif many times in this broadcast. By contrast, the Ukrainian chief of their armed forces, Valery Zaluzhny, disagrees. This is what he had to say allegedly in a conversation with Zelensky, a Ukrainian premier. So Zaluzhny says the defensive operation in Bakhmut is of paramount importance, of paramount strategic importance to deterring the enemy. Excuse me. It is key for the stability of the defense of the entire front line. So it couldn't be more sharply opposing views. Now, in order to try and decode this a little bit, I'm going to play you a clip from a press briefing given by the US Secretary of Defense Lloyd J. Austin, mentioned in this quote, and standing to his right will be General Mark A. Miley. I'm going to offer a little commentary of the many egregious euphemisms that are tossed towards the grateful media, and indeed supplied by them in this short clip. Here it is. Look as we go through the clip actually at the expression of General Mark A. Miley. He'd be standing on the right, and if it's possible for someone to look, how can I say, unpleased and hostile to the gentleman on the left. I can't imagine how he could. His face, shall we say, speaks volumes.
Secretary Austin, I'd like to go back to some comments you made in Brussels. You said that Bakhmut was largely symbolic. Are you concerned that the Ukrainian investment in Bakhmut potentially takes away resources that could be applied?
Now, when this journalist is referring to resources, there's a reason that she's doing that. This is not an idle choice of word. When she says resources, what she's referring to are the lives of Ukrainian soldiers. But we can't say that because it wouldn't be tasteful to ask the US Secretary of Defense, sir, are you concerned at all about throwing away that the Ukrainians in fighting your proxy war are throwing away the lives of their soldiers in a pointless defense of Bakhmut, and we'll need those soldiers for some glorious counter-offensive, won't we, sir? So we don't say that. What we refer to are resources. Now again, look at the expression of General Miley to the right as she asked that question, and look at regards to his response
to the spring offensive and risks the outcome of that offensive. Thank you.
If you don't mind, I'll go first. Nancy, first of all, let me applaud the valor, the persistence that we've seen from the Ukrainian soldiers. They have done amazing things in Bakhmut. I think the Russians have been working to take Bakhmut for some 7 months or so now. They haven't been very successful, and that's because of the diligence, the commitment, the focus of the Ukrainian soldiers.
Is that a look? I think it is. Is that a look from General Miley, a look of pure disgust on his face when he hears him say that?
In terms of the significance of Bakhmut, I would point to the fact that President Zelensky is fighting this fight.
Well, President Zelensky is not carrying this fight. President Zelensky is in Kiev when he's getting his picture taken for Vogue magazine, or popping up on every kind of publicity stunt and attention-grabbing thing on media all over the world. One place he certainly isn't is in Bakhmut.
And he will make the calls on what's important and what's not important to him.
Well, will he make calls on what's important and what's not important? I think that will have a great deal to do with the gentleman here on the left and the gentleman here on the right. It does with Zelensky.
His forces, and whether he needs to reposition or remain in Bakhmut. The point that I would make is, if he does make a call to reposition at some point in time,
so reposition is code for, in this context of Bakhmut, this repositioning will involve trying to withdraw Ukrainian soldiers, what's left of the Ukrainian force in Bakhmut, which is littered with the corpses of Ukrainian and Russian soldiers. Basically the Ukrainians trying to run away from Bakhmut while being shelled in 3 directions and probably few remaining roads that they have any hope of traversing.
Doesn't mean that the war is lost. It may mean, and probably will mean, that he is positioning himself to maintain advantage.
He's positioning himself to maintain advantage. Have you ever heard a more laughable cover-up of a bloody military defeat in your life?
And so I think that's the real key there. But whether or not he stays there or how long they stay there, that's President Zelensky's call, and not anybody else's.
This is really interesting. I mean, there is a tendency, I think, to view the relationship between Ukraine their nominated proxies in this war against Russia, and the Americans, who are their primary sponsors, of course, as a relationship between a puppet and puppeteers. I don't think it's as straightforward as that. I think there is some tension in the relationship between Zelensky and the Americans about what the military priorities are. I think it's been clear for some time that the Americans don't regard Bakhmut as worth fighting for, the Ukrainians disagree. There's also tension, I think, between widely reported tension, whether it's true or not, I can't honestly say. But there's widely reported tension also between Zelensky and Zaluzhny, the commander of the Ukrainian armed forces, and so there is this triangle going on between them. I think Zelensky has always had his eye on public relations and how these look. He's been super reluctant to ever concede any territory to Russia because of the optics of how badly it looks. The Ukrainian military, I think, have always wanted to take a more pragmatic approach. I think the American political branch, as opposed to the American military branch, have wanted the Ukrainians sometimes to take a more pragmatic approach.
And again, our goal is to make sure that we're supporting him in whatever decision battlefield decision he's going to make. And by the way, we're generating combat power to a degree that we believe that it will provide them opportunities to change the dynamics on the battlefield.
Let's just unpick those two sentences for a minute. We're generating combat power so that we can provide opportunities to change the dynamics on the battlefield. It's a marvellously convoluted language. Now, what does he mean by generating combat power? Well, it definitely doesn't mean sending soldiers. We know that. The America's not willing to get into a direct military confrontation with Russia, and that's wise because they're a nuclear superpower. So it has to have a nominated proxy. So when they say generating combat power, they don't mean sending soldiers. What they mean is sending weapons and ammunition so that the Ukrainians can shoot them at Russians. And so the opportunities to change dynamics on the battlefield is that in the minds of people like Lloyd Austin, who, as I've already said, I don't think he's the sharpest knife in the drawer. He thinks that all you need to do to win a war is just to send more and more weapons to one side, and that'll sort it out. Bear that phrase in mind. Opportunity to change the dynamics on the battlefield when you see the next clip.
At some point going forward, whatever.
This clip is from Bakhmut, and it was recorded a couple of days ago. This is a Ukrainian rear defense guard trying to rescue a severely wounded soldier from the sort of Passchendaele hellhole that this city has become. The bridge that you see on the right hand side has been blown up by the Ukrainians to as an attempt to slow the Russian advance. And this is the reality of the generating combat power that Lloyd Austin speaks about, and the many opportunities for the Ukrainians to change the dynamics of the battlefield in service of American imperialism. And I'm sure as they sort of struggle to rescue this wounded colleague under fire, how grateful they are really for the marvellous opportunity of fighting for Washington and for Ursula von der Leyen and all the rest. This is the reality of Bakhmut. A World War I. I hesitate to use this phrase because it's so horrible, but a World War I mincing machine, a World War I meat grinder, a World War I style meat grinder. a ruined city, dead bodies, wounded soldiers at every turn. This is the marvelous opportunity that the Americans are providing Ukraine. Now, I've put together a little montage of clips to demonstrate the Western media take on the situation in Bakhmut, and you will notice that it all cleaves to a theme, and that theme is strangely that they all agree with Lloyd Austin that the loss of Bakhmut is of no military significance, and it's all marvellously symbolic. And I thought it was worth pointing out that while these people are reaching this journalistic opinion, if we can call it that none of these people, virtually none of these people, are in Bakhmut or anywhere near Bakhmut. They're actually in Kiev. Now, Kiev is nearly 700 kilometers away from Bakhmut. Now, to put that in context for a British audience, that would be the same as, say, England is at war with Scotland, and a key battle is raging in Dundee, and English troops closing in to take the city. And that would be the equivalent of reporting on that battle from London. And it's like, these are the things that you need to bear in mind when you're decoding kind of that day-to Western media response. I mean, first of all, these people are not journalists. The people you're about to see on your screen pontificating about the situation in Bakhmut, they're not journalists, they're TV presenters, they're not in Bakhmut. And nearly all of the Western news outlets, they all sing from the same hymn sheet, and they're an amplification of a news factory that begins with Western military intelligence. Primarily the American and Western military intelligence. Propaganda, their battle to control the narrative. And it ends with some chump in Kiev holding a microphone. And they say what they are told to say. It's not about journalistic integrity or inquiry. They're not there dodging shells and wearing flat jackets and the tradition of the great war correspondents of the past. They leave their hotel in Kiev. They're handed a script of what to say. They say it to camera, and then they go back to their hotel again. So the US Secretary of Defense says that Bakhmut is purely symbolic and there's no strategic military value to the Russians. So oddly enough, that's what they all say. Watch this though.
The town, and yes, you mentioned there, it has become hugely symbolic. Military analysts will tell you that if the Russians take Bakhmut, it will not change the course of the war. But
it is an odd thing about the fight here. Russia doesn't gain much by taking this city. Bakhmut isn't particularly strategic. It doesn't.
It's not a strategic location in the sense that it would open
from Kiev. I mean, why is the Russian military putting so much effort into gaining control of Bakhmut, given its apparent lack of strategic importance?
And what that means is that it's gained a symbolic significance for both sides, which far exceeds its strategic importance.
Politically, they've got to manage the loss of Bakhmut if they lose it. But militarily, it doesn't do the Russians any good at all.
Though the city itself presents no major military significance, the control of Bakhmut has become symbolic.
Well, if you talk to Western analysts, if you talk to Ukrainians, they say there is little strategic value.
So basically, Putin is betting everything on Bakhmut, which is not a strategic location.
Russia will have at most a Pyrrhic victory, having expended a great deal of resources and manpower on a city that is not really strategically important in the Ukraine war.
Goodness, I could have selected from literally hundreds, possibly thousands of news broadcasts over the last few weeks as it became clear that Bakhmut is going to fall, but say exactly the same thing. The echo point for point US defense briefings that say Bakhmut is of no strategic and operational value. It is symbolic. They say that. The media says that. Now, the Ukrainians disagree. Why is it so important for the Western media to convey the American message that Bakhmut is of no importance? It's very simple. Ukraine is losing this war. They certainly have no hope of winning it, and they are hemorrhaging troops. They are low on ammunition, and there's no way that that situation logistically can be addressed. They are losing territory, and the West has no plan whatsoever of what to do in Ukraine beyond sending them more weapons. And so this is flat out denial. We won't deal with the situation that Ukraine is starting to lose this conflict against Russia because it's unthinkable. So we'll just keep spinning narratives in the hope that it'll all go away. It's not going to go away. Ukraine is losing this war. And the only thing to be gained now by sending Ukraine ever more weapons is to turn what is already a horrific bloodbath into an even more horrific bloodbath. And this spin, this propaganda, is designed to conceal that fact. Now, I'm going to play you another clip shortly. This is from northern Ukraine, and it actually features Ukrainian soldiers' take on the value of Bakhmut.
This is the Luhansk region of Ukraine. Crimea is about 47 miles north of Bakhmut, where the bloodiest battle in Europe since World War II is taking place. And although it may seem quiet in this forest, Tuman says he fears the same tactics and strategies being used by Russia in Bakhmut may be playing out here as well, but over a much wider area. The Russians, they say, are sending waves of forces to attempt one giant pincer move.
If they come to Liman, then beyond there is Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. It will pose a pincer threat, which is why they are trying to fight for this area so heavily.
This Ukrainian soldier understands the importance of Bakhmut. The Ukrainian defense ministry understands the importance of Bakhmut. The Western media types milling about in Kiev don't understand the importance of Bakhmut because they don't understand anything and just say what they're told. But be under no illusions. Bakhmut will fall in the next few days, and it is a pivotal loss for the Ukrainians. There is nothing to be gained by continuing to send ever more weapons to a fighting force from the Ukraine side, which cannot win this war, apart from ever more horror. And that is the lie that the Western corporate media are spinning you right now.
This is no less important than Bakhmut.
Here is Bakhmut, this town of no strategic importance. Note to the north, between Krasnogora and Yehidny, the cluster of railway lines that go south, north, and west. The railway lines that have been key in moving armoured vehicles around and troops around in this war. Note that Bakhmut has a cluster of important road junctions. Note also that Bakhmut forms part of a defence line in the Donbass that begins with Siversk, goes down to Solidar, Krasnogora, and Bakhmut. Now, when Solidar fell a few weeks ago, the writing was on the wall for Bakhmut. This entire defensive line is about to collapse, and the loss of Bakhmut is extremely significant. The Ukrainians will have to fall back beyond Chasiv Yar to a new defensive line, which will defend the cities of Kramatorsk and Sloviansk, as there is nothing to suggest, as the Ukrainian soldiers just said, that there is anything the Ukrainians can do about that. That's all I'm going to say about Bakhmut. We've got a couple of other stories to cover. The first of which is the ongoing turmoil in the financial markets, primarily pivoted around the collapses of American banks and in recent days with this large mid-level bank, Credit Suisse. The media narrative about the collapse of these banks is that the authorities have got it all under control. Nothing to worry about. That's nothing to see here. The experts are on the case, and nothing could be further from the truth. The global financial system is teetering, as it does all the time, on the brink of total collapse. And the only way that they have to resolve it is to drive enormous dumper trucks full of public money into private banks to prop them up so that their bonuses and extraordinary lifestyles and massive wages and share options can continue. This has already happened in the last few hours. Credit Suisse have been provided with liquidity, as they call it. Everybody has to have liquidity, you know, to the tune of 44 billion pounds. I think that might buy Credit Suisse some time. Will it solve the overall hollowness of the Ponzi scheme that is modern capitalism and indeed the modern global monetary system? No, it won't. We will bring you more on this story as it unfolds. Now, the last thing that we're going to talk about today is this clip, which you may have seen doing the rounds. Approaching it's going back to Ukraine briefly. This is in the Black Sea. What you see in the foreground is the wing of an American Reaper drone. It's a very sophisticated multi-million-dollar surveillance drone. It's in the Black Sea, keeping an eye on Russian operations. Approaching the drone is a Russian fighter jet. Watch what happens next. Now, what the Americans allege is that what the I believe this to be true, that what the Russian fighter jet is doing there is dumping fuel on top of this drone in order to make it crash. The Russians have denied it. I don't believe them. I think that's a plausible explanation. They have video evidence of it. Here's the jet coming around for a second pass. The drone signal stops and then it, by all accounts, crashes into the Black Sea. So, what are we global citizens to make of this? Well, the Western media predictably seeks to inflame the situation and to blame Russia. I mean, this is a little article lifted from what I call Empire News, that other people call The Guardian. The top quote is quite funny. On any given day around Ukraine's Black Sea coast, Russian and NATO aircraft and naval vessels, manned and unmanned, buzz around in close proximity. A constant recipe for a superpower crisis along the edges of a war. So, it's an interesting phrase, isn't it? Buzz around. That's what the innocent little multi-million-dollar surveillance Reaper drone was doing near Russia's primary naval base in the Black Sea. We're just buzzing around in proximity, just buzzing around, minding its own business, because that's why you send multi-million-dollar surveillance drones close to Russian naval facilities, just to buzz around and mind their own business. The article notes that thousands of nuclear warheads are owned by both sides, which is true, and a reason why we shouldn't be engaged. The West should not be engaged in these games of brinkmanship and proxy war in Ukraine in the first place. Though the Russians say that the Reaper drone crashed in the Black Sea of its own accord, I think that's extremely unlikely. And the article concludes that, well, you know, the Americans have made allegations, and the Russians have a long record of aggressive behaviour, and of course the Americans don't, being international promoters of hippie values and peace around the globe, as we all know. How absolutely laughable. that's it from Sodium Haze. Thank you for joining us. We will improve the quality of these broadcasts and the microphone, all the rest of it. Bear with us. If you like what you've heard, seen so far, click like and subscribe and share the video. Go in peace, brothers and sisters, to love and serve the Lord. The Mass is ended.